Have you ever felt like life is spinning just a little too fast, like no matter how hard you try, you can't quite keep up with the chaos? You're not alone. In a world that never slows down, where stress and uncertainty seem to lurk around every corner, it's easy to feel like you've lost control. But what if I told you there's a way to reclaim that control, not by changing the world around you, but by mastering the world within you? That's exactly what Stoicism offers, a 2,000-year-old philosophy that's more relevant today than ever. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's greatest Stoic thinkers, put it perfectly: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. And that's the heart of Stoicism. It's not about shutting out life's challenges, but about transforming how you meet them. Think about the last time you felt overwhelmed. Maybe it was a deadline, a disagreement, or just the weight of everyday responsibilities. Now imagine facing those moments with unshakable calm, clarity, and even gratitude. That's the promise of Stoic wisdom. This isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending life is perfect. It's about cultivating a mindset that turns obstacles into opportunities, fear into fuel, and chaos into clarity. The Stoics called it ataraxia, a state of inner peace that comes from mastering your reactions, no matter what life throws your way. And the best part: it's not reserved for ancient philosophers or modern-day gurus. These tools are available to anyone willing to practice them. In this video, we're going to explore how Stoic principles can help you unlock that inner harmony. We'll dive into timeless practices that teach you how to focus on what you can control, let go of what you can't, and find strength in adversity. You'll discover how to reframe challenges, cultivate resilience, and build a life of purpose, not by changing your circumstances, but by changing your perspective. This isn't just philosophy, it's a practical guide to living with more peace, confidence, and joy. So if you're ready to step off the roller coaster of stress and into a mindset of mastery, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Stoic mastery begins with a simple but radical idea: true power lies not in controlling the world around you, but in mastering your own mind. The ancient teacher Epictetus laid the foundation with what he called the Dichotomy of Control. Picture this: everything in life falls into two categories. On one side, things we can't control: the weather, other people's opinions, traffic jams. On the other, what we absolutely can control: our judgments, our efforts, and how we choose to respond. That's where real freedom lies. As Seneca put it, a man's as miserable as he thinks he is. In other words, your suffering isn't determined by what happens to you, but by how you interpret it. Take something as common as workplace frustration. Imagine your colleague takes credit for your idea in a meeting. Your pulse quickens, your face flushes. That initial reaction is natural. But here's where Stoic mastery kicks in. Instead of spiraling into anger or resentment, you pause. You ask yourself, can I control their actions? No. Can I control how I handle this? Absolutely. Maybe you choose to address it calmly later, or you decide their behavior isn't worth your energy. Either way, you've reclaimed your power by focusing on what's yours to command. This isn't about being passive or indifferent. It's about directing your energy where it actually matters. Think of it like sailing. You can't control the wind, but you can adjust your sails. That's inner alignment, when your emotions and actions aren't at the mercy of external chaos. Where in your life do you notice yourself reacting on autopilot? Maybe it's road rage, or refreshing your inbox waiting for approval, or scrolling through social media comparing yourself to others. Those moments are golden opportunities to practice Stoic mastery. Every time you pause and ask, is this within my control? You're training your mind like a muscle, and just like any skill, the more you practice, the stronger you become. The Stoics weren't preaching perfection, they were teaching perspective. Mastery isn't about never feeling anger or fear, it's about not letting those feelings steer the ship. When you shift your focus from changing the world to refining your responses, something extraordinary happens. Challenges stop being obstacles and start becoming classrooms. Frustration becomes patience training. Uncertainty becomes a chance to practice trust. That's the essence of Stoic mastery, not a life without storms, but an unshakable calm within them. Marcus Aurelius had a phrase that cut straight to the heart of Stoic wisdom. The obstacle is the way. He didn't see setbacks as roadblocks, he saw them as the path itself. Imagine that for a moment. Every frustration, every disappointment, every unexpected twist isn't something standing in your way. It's the very thing that shapes your strength. That shift in perception is like turning coal into diamonds. Pressure isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. This is where cognitive reframing comes in, a tool the Stoics mastered long before modern psychology gave it a name. Think of your mind like a camera lens. When life feels blurry or out of focus, you don't throw the camera away. You adjust the lens. Criticism, that's feedback in disguise. Failure, a lesson wearing work clothes. Even something as simple as a delayed flight becomes a chance to practice patience or catch up on reading. The event itself doesn't change, but your relationship to it transforms completely. Consider how Epictetus put it. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Let that sink in. Two people can face the exact same situation, a job loss, a breakup, a missed opportunity, and walk away with entirely different experiences. One falls into despair, the other finds a fresh start. The difference isn't luck or circumstance, it's perception. Now bring this into your own life. Recall a recent setback, maybe a project that didn't go as planned or a conversation that left you stung. At the time, it might have felt like a defeat. But what if you saw it as a redirect, a nudge toward something better, or at the very least, a chance to build resilience? That's not wishful thinking, it's strategic reframing. The Stoics didn't ignore pain, they just refused to let it write the whole story. Here's the real magic. When you start viewing challenges as training grounds, you stop dreading them and start growing from them. A tough workout isn't punishing your body, it's making it stronger. Similarly, mental grit isn't built on easy days. Every time you choose to see obstacles as opportunities, you're not just surviving life's storms, you're learning to dance in the rain. Friedrich Nietzsche once borrowed a powerful idea from the Stoics when he wrote, "Amor Fati, love of fate." It's not just about accepting what happens to you, it's about embracing it wholeheartedly, as if you'd chosen it yourself. The Stoics took this even further. Seneca wrote, "Fate leads the willing and drags the unwilling." In other words, life will move forward with or without your consent, but when you stop fighting it, you unlock a profound sense of freedom. Picture Marcus Aurelius ruling the Roman Empire during wars, plagues, and betrayals. He could have crumbled under the weight of it all. Instead, he wrote in his private journal, "The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way. That's amor fati in practice. He didn't just tolerate adversity, he used it as fuel. Every setback was a chance to practice virtue, every betrayal a lesson in discernment. This mindset isn't about passive resignation. It's active acceptance, like a martial artist using an opponent's momentum to their advantage. When you stop resisting life's twists, you stop wasting energy on what should be and start working with what is. Think of a river. You can stand in it, fighting the current until you're exhausted, or you can flow with it, letting it carry you toward new possibilities. Now bring this into your own life. Is there a situation you've been resisting, a job change you didn't plan, a relationship that ended? even something as small as a rainy day ruining your outing. What if, just for a moment, you embraced it completely, not because it's ideal, but because fighting reality only amplifies the pain? Amor Fati flips the script. This is happening. How can I grow from it? Maybe the job change leads to a better path. Maybe the heartbreak teaches you about your own boundaries. Maybe the rain forces you to slow down and rest. The Stoics weren't asking you to pretend life is perfect. They were inviting you to stop arguing with reality, because when you do, you'll find that life's sharpest edges often smooth the way for your greatest growth. So here's your challenge. Pick one thing you've been resisting this week and try this simple shift. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What's this trying to teach me?" That subtle pivot, that's where the magic begins. What do you truly need? Strip away the noise for a moment. The ads telling you to buy more, the social pressure to keep up, the endless chase for the next thing, and ask yourself that question with brutal honesty. The Stoics called this the discipline of desire, and it's perhaps their most countercultural teaching. Epictetus put it bluntly: wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Imagine living by that standard, not depriving yourself, but freeing yourself from the constant hunger for more. Modern life bombards us with desires we didn't choose, luxuries reframed as necessities, wants disguised as needs. Compare that to Musonius Rufus, who taught that simple living isn't about poverty, it's about clarity. He ate plain food, wore rough clothing, and slept on the ground, not because he had to, but because he wanted to prove to himself that happiness wasn't tied to comfort. The person who has many possessions, he said, is more troubled than the one who is simply nourished. Think about that. Every extra thing we crave isn't just an object, it's a potential source of stress, a new thread tying us to external validation. This isn't about rejecting joy or living like an ascetic. It's about distinguishing between desires that serve your growth and those that enslave you to circumstance. Take a moment to audit your own wants. That gadget you're saving for, the approval you're seeking, the lifestyle you're comparing yours to. How many of these are truly yours, and how many were handed to you by a world that profits from your dissatisfaction? The Stoics weren't against enjoying life's pleasures. They were against letting those pleasures dictate your peace. Here's the litmus test. Can you want something without needing it to be happy? That's the space where freedom lives, when your desires align with virtue, with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-mastery. You stop chasing shadows and start building a life that's resilient to fortune's whims. So tonight, try this small act of rebellion. Pause before your next purchase or goal and ask, is this desire serving my growth, or is it quietly owning me? The answer might surprise you. Seneca once urged his students to do something that might sound strange at first, to regularly rehearse tragedy in their minds. Not to dwell on fear, but to disarm it. He called it Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. Here's how it works. Instead of waiting for life's blows to catch you off guard, you mentally walk through them in advance. Imagine losing your job, your health, even a loved one. Not to torture yourself, but to expose the raw edges of your dependence on fortune. The Stoics weren't pessimists, they were realists. By confronting worst-case scenarios in the safety of their minds, they stripped those scenarios of their power to shock. Think of it like a fire drill. No one hopes for a fire, but practicing an escape route means you won't freeze in panic if smoke fills the hallway. Negative visualization works the same way. Picture this: you wake up to an email saying your position's been eliminated. Your stomach drops, but because you've mentally prepared, you don't spiral. Instead, you hear Epictetus whispering, "What's within my control?" You can't reverse the decision, but you can update your resume, lean on your network, or even see this as a push toward a path you'd been too afraid to take. The event hasn't changed, but your readiness transforms it from a crisis into a challenge. This practice does something even more profound. It fuels gratitude. By imagining life without your comforts, your home, your health, your relationships, you suddenly see them with fresh eyes. The Stoics called this the poverty of the rich, the way privilege can blind us to our own abundance. Try it right now. Close your eyes and picture your life without something you take for granted. Your morning coffee, your ability to walk, your closest friend. Now open them, that rush of relief, that stoic gratitude in action. Resilience isn't about avoiding hardship, it's about knowing you can meet it. When you regularly visit the edges of your fears in your mind, you build a kind of emotional callus. The first time you visualize losing a job, it might sting. The 10th time, you've already mapped your next steps. That's why Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Begin each day by telling yourself, today I shall meet interference, ingratitude, insolence, but none of these things will injure me." He wasn't being gloomy, he was immunizing himself against disappointment. Here's your challenge. Pick one modern worry, say, a sudden bill you can't pay, and spend 5 minutes walking through it. How would you adapt? Who could you ask for help? What frugal skills could you dust off? Notice how the fear shrinks when you replace "what if" with "then what." That's the art of negative visualization, not to predict the future, but to prepare your mind for any future. Because when you've already faced the storm in your imagination, the real rain feels lighter. Stoicism might be 2,000 years old, but its approach to mindfulness feels startlingly modern. While today's meditation apps guide you to focus on your breath, Marcus Aurelius was writing in his journals about the power of anchoring yourself in the here and now, not as a relaxation technique, but as a way to reclaim your agency. He'd remind himself, concentrate every minute like a Roman on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness. That's not just poetic advice, it's a blueprint for what psychologists now call present moment awareness. The Stoics didn't have a term like mindfulness, but they practiced something even more rigorous, prosoch, the art of vigilant attention. Imagine your mind as a fortified city. Every thought, every impression is like a traveler seeking entry. Epictetus warned, first say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. In other words, don't let every passing emotion or external event storm your gates unchallenged. Modern mindfulness teaches observation. Stoicism adds a layer of discernment. When frustration arises in traffic, you don't just notice it, you interrogate it. Is this feeling justified? Does it serve me? That's the Stoic edge, mindfulness with a purpose. Here's where this gets practical. Try this exercise tomorrow. Pick an ordinary moment, sipping coffee, waiting in line, scrolling your phone, and pause. Notice not just your surroundings, but your silent commentary. This line is too slow. My coffee isn't hot enough. Those judgments are like background apps draining your mental battery. The Stoic move, observe them without hitting, share. Epictetus put it bluntly, don't let the force of an impression when it first hits you knock you off your feet. You're not stopping the thought, you're refusing to let it hijack your peace. What makes Stoic mindfulness unique is its refusal to float passively on the river of experience. It's about grabbing an oar. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one," he was calling for attention fused with action. Compare that to modern meditation's often abstract focus. Both paths value awareness, but Stoicism asks, awareness for what? The answer, to live with virtue, to choose wisely, to meet chaos with clarity. So tonight, as you brush your teeth or wind down, experiment with this ancient upgrade to mindfulness. Don't just notice your tiredness or tomorrow's worries. Ask yourself, what's within my power right now? Maybe it's releasing tension in your shoulders. Maybe it's gratitude for the day's small wins. That's Stoic presence, not just being here, but being here on purpose. And in a world of endless distractions, that might be the most radical act of self-mastery there is. Cato the Younger was famous for walking barefoot in snow-covered streets, wearing only a thin tunic in winter, and eating plain meals even when he could afford feasts. His friends called it madness, he called it training. The Stoics weren't masochists, they were strategists. By voluntarily embracing discomfort, they built an immunity to life's inevitable hardships. Seneca put it plainly: set aside a certain number of days to be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, saying to yourself, is this the condition I feared? That question cuts to the core of voluntary discomfort. It's not about suffering for suffering's sake. It's about proving to yourself that you can handle more than you think. Modern life has engineered comfort to an unprecedented degree. Heated seats, instant meals, endless entertainment at our fingertips. Yet studies show anxiety and fragility are rising. There's a term for this paradox: the comfort crisis. Our bodies and minds evolved to face challenges, not avoid them. Like muscles that atrophy without resistance, resilience weakens when never tested. That's why practices like cold showers or intermittent fasting have surged in popularity. They're not just health trends, they're modern Stoicism. When you choose to step into an ice-cold shower, you're not just shocking your system, you're rehearsing for life's unexpected plunges. The shuddering breath, the racing thoughts, the urge to escape, it's all there. But so is the realization: I can stay, I can breathe through this. That's the hidden gift of voluntary discomfort. It rewrites your relationship with adversity before adversity forces your hand. Temperance was one of the 4 cardinal Stoic virtues, and Seneca framed it beautifully. It is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the one who craves more. Voluntary discomfort is temperance in action. It's the deliberate space between I want and I have. Skip dessert not to punish yourself, but to remember that sweetness isn't owed to you. Leave your phone behind on a walk, not as deprivation, but to reclaim your attention. These small acts are like fire drills for desire, proof that you're not enslaved to your cravings. Here's the challenge: pick one tiny discomfort today and wear it like armor. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Drink your coffee black. Sit with an awkward silence instead of filling it. Notice how your mind rebels at first, then adapts. That moment of adaptation is where resilience lives. The Stoics knew what modern science confirms: discomfort is the price of strength, but it's also the path to freedom. When you stop running from minor inconveniences, you start realizing how much power you've always had. Marcus Aurelius never intended his private journal to become one of history's most profound works of philosophy. He called it simply, to himself, a nightly ritual of reflection that sharpened his mind and steadied his spirit. Those pages, now known as meditations, weren't filled with grand theories or poetic flourishes. They were raw, honest conversations with his own soul. That's the power of Stoic journaling. It's not about writing for an audience, but about confronting yourself with clarity and courage. As Seneca advised his friend Lucilius, retire into yourself as much as possible. Associate with people who may improve you. Welcome those whom you can improve. The process is mutual. Your journal becomes that trusted companion, a silent partner in your growth. Stoic journaling isn't just recording events, it's mining them for wisdom. Start with this simple triad every night. First, what went well today, not to inflate your ego, but to recognize where you aligned with virtue. Did you pause before reacting to a provocation? Did you find gratitude in a small moment? These victories, however minor, reinforce your progress. Next, what could improve? Not self-flagellation, but honest inventory. Maybe you lost patience with a loved one or wasted hours scrolling. The Stoics called this hypomnemata, a mindful reckoning without shame. Finally, what lessons emerged? Epictetus was adamant, no man is free who is not master of himself. Every challenge holds a lesson if you're willing to extract it, that frustrating delay. A workshop in patience, the criticism that stung, a mirror revealing where your confidence wavers. Consider how Epictetus framed self-examination. If you didn't learn these things in order to demonstrate them in practice, what did you learn them for? Your journal is the proving ground. When you write, "I wish I'd handled that differently," you're not just venting, you're programming your mind to act differently tomorrow. Marcus Aurelius modeled this perfectly. Facing betrayal, he didn't dwell on the offense. He wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, but I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own." That's journaling as recalibration, stepping back to see the bigger picture. Here's how to make it stick. Keep your journal by your bed and dedicate just 5 minutes before sleep. No elaborate prose bullet points work. The goal isn't volume but consistency. Over time, you'll spot patterns. Maybe you'll notice how often your frustrations stem from unmet expectations, or how small acts of kindness lift your spirit. Seneca described this practice as daily harvesting your experiences. Without it, life's lessons slip through your fingers like sand. With it, you become both student and teacher, uncovering insights no podcast or book can hand you. Tonight, try this experiment. Put pen to paper and ask yourself Epictetus' piercing question. What progress have I made, not in wealth or status, but in wisdom, resilience, and inner freedom? The answer might surprise you, and the act of asking it will set you firmly on the Stoic path. Seneca's On Anger reads like a 2,000-year-old masterclass in emotional intelligence. He describes anger as brief insanity, a fire that burns the hand of the one who carries it. But here's the Stoic twist: they didn't see emotions as enemies to be crushed. They saw them as signals to be interpreted, like a check engine light on your dashboard. The key isn't to ignore the light or smash it in frustration. It's to pop the hood and diagnose the issue with cool precision. That's where reason becomes your most powerful tool. Take road rage, a modern epidemic. Someone cuts you off, your jaw clenches, your heart pounds. That initial surge of adrenaline, totally normal. But here's the critical gap Stoics exploit: the split second between that surge and your reaction. Seneca called it the prima motus, the first movement. It's not the emotion itself that's the problem. It's the story you tell yourself about it. They did that on purpose. They deserve my fury. That's where logic steps in. Ask yourself, is my anger improving this situation? Is the driver who cut me off even aware of my reaction? Suddenly, you're not a prisoner of your emotions. You're an observer with agency. Marcus Aurelius framed this battle beautifully. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Imagine applying that to any heated moment. A coworker takes credit for your idea. Instead of seething, you pause. Will an outburst repair the injustice, or will it just paint me as volatile? This isn't about suppressing feelings, it's about channeling them with purpose. The Stoics compared the mind to a garden. Emotions are the weather, unpredictable, uncontrollable, but reason, that's your rake, your shears, your fence. You can't stop the storm, but you can decide what gets uprooted and what gets nurtured. Now bring this into your own life. What emotion tends to hijack your better judgment? Maybe it's envy when a friend succeeds, or anxiety before a big presentation. Try this Stoic exercise. The next time that feeling arises, hit pause, name it. Then interrogate it. What's the underlying belief here? Is it true? Anxiety might whisper, you'll fail. Reason counters or you'll learn. Envy mutters they don't deserve that. Logic asks, does their good fortune diminish mine? This back and forth isn't just philosophical, it's neurological. Studies show that labeling emotions reduces their intensity, literally calming the amygdala. The Stoics were neuroscientists before neuroscience existed. Here's the profound truth Seneca uncovered. Anger, fear, jealousy, they are all rooted in the same faulty assumption that externals should conform to our wishes. But life doesn't work that way. The driver should signal, the boss should notice your effort, the world should be fair. Stoicism's genius is in swapping should for is. The driver didn't signal, the boss overlooked me, the world is as it is. Now, instead of railing against reality, you're free to respond effectively. That shift from resistance to resourcefulness is where emotional mastery begins. So tonight, pick one emotion you'd like to regulate better. Tomorrow, when it flares, remember, the space between trigger and reaction is your arena of power. And in that space, reason is your greatest ally. The Stoics had a name for their highest ideal, the sage. Not some mystical figure on a mountaintop, but an everyday master of reason, someone who meets chaos with unshakable clarity. Here's the crucial nuance: they never claimed to be sages. Even Marcus Aurelius, the emperor philosopher, wrote in his private journal about his own struggles with anger and distraction. The sage wasn't a finish line, it was a compass. Epictetus put it bluntly, if you want to be a Stoic, understand that you'll never be one. Sounds paradoxical until you realize the pursuit itself is the point. Picture two people stuck in the same traffic jam. One white knuckles the wheel, muttering curses, body tense. The other takes a deep breath, turns on an audiobook, uses the delay to reflect. Neither controls the gridlock, but one is clearly closer to that sage-like ideal. That's the distinction Stoicism draws, not between those who never feel frustration and those who do, but between those who let frustration steer them and those who consciously choose their response. The sage isn't emotionless, they're emotionally agile. Epictetus offered a brilliant metaphor for this lifelong climb. Imagine philosophy as a ladder. You don't berate yourself for not yet reaching the top rung, you celebrate each step upward. That's the spirit. Your coworker snaps at you, and instead of snapping back, you pause. That pause, that's a rung on the ladder. You skip dessert not because you're perfect, but because you're practicing temperance. Every time you reframe a setback as a lesson, you're inching closer to that aspirational version of yourself. Now try this exercise. Think of a recent moment that tested your patience. Maybe it was a rude comment, a missed deadline, or just the exhaustion of daily life. Now imagine your sage self in that same scenario. How would they breathe? What would they prioritize? Chances are they wouldn't magically dissolve the problem, but they'd face it with dignity, focus, and a quiet reminder. This, too, is material for growth. That gap between your reactive self and your sage self, that's where the work happens. The beauty of the Stoic sage is that it's not about achieving flawlessness. It's about recognizing that every challenge is an invitation to practice wisdom. As Seneca wrote, no one is born wise, but everyone is born for wisdom. So instead of measuring yourself against an impossible standard, ask a simpler question. Am I moving toward my better self today? Sometimes the answer will be yes, sometimes no. But the asking itself, that's the beginning of mastery. Marcus Aurelius didn't just face obstacles, he turned them into engines of progress. The obstacle is the way wasn't a motivational slogan to him, it was an operating system. Think of it like alchemy for adversity. What if every setback, every limitation wasn't a wall to bang your head against, but a hidden door waiting to be pushed open? History's greatest Stoics didn't just endure hardships, they reverse-engineered them. Take Demosthenes, the ancient Greek orator whose name became synonymous with eloquence. Few know he started with a crippling speech impediment, a stutter so severe crowds mocked him. But here's the Stoic twist: he didn't just overcome it, he weaponized it. He practiced with pebbles in his mouth to strengthen his tongue, shouted above ocean waves to project his voice. His weakness became his training ground. By the time he stood before Athens, his once mocked stammer had forged a voice that could sway nations. That's the essence of proactive inversion, not waiting for life to hand you strength, but extracting it from your struggles. Now fast forward to modern careers. Imagine two employees during a company downsizing. One sees a dead end, the other spots a chance to pivot. The second one takes severance pay to upskill, launching a consultancy in their specialty. What looked like a collapse becomes a catapult. This isn't luck, it's applied Stoicism. When the tech industry disrupted journalism, the savviest reporters didn't cling to sinking ships. They transferred their investigative skills to podcasts, documentaries, corporate storytelling. The obstacle, a dying medium, forced reinvention they might have otherwise avoided. Here's where this gets personal. What's your current obstacle? A rejection, a resource gap, a skill you lack? Try this reframe. How could this very limitation be sculpting something valuable in you? Maybe that job you didn't get saves you from a toxic culture. Maybe your tight budget is teaching resourcefulness that'll serve you when scaling a business. Even physical challenges follow this pattern. Famed neurologist Oliver Sacks transformed his own prosopagnosia, the inability to recognize faces, into groundbreaking research on perception. His flaw became his lens for understanding the brain. The Stoics knew a secret modern psychology confirms: constraints breed creativity. A blank page paralyzes, a prompt inspires. Your obstacles aren't just barriers, they're boundary conditions that force focus and innovation. So today, pick one frustration gnawing at you. Then ask, if this weren't an obstacle but an assignment, a deliberate challenge meant to strengthen me, what would it be teaching? The answer might not change your circumstances, but it will change how you meet them. And that shift from resisting to repurposing is where ordinary endurance becomes extraordinary mastery. Every decision you make is a brick in the foundation of your character. That's the heart of Stoic Prohereis, the art of aligned choice. The Stoics didn't see decisions as isolated moments, but as reflections of your deepest values. Epictetus put it bluntly: you are your choices. Imagine standing at a crossroads where every path whispers a different temptation: approval, convenience, short-term gain. The Stoic question cuts through the noise: does this choice serve my virtue? Not just what's easy or advantageous, but what's right according to wisdom, courage, justice, and self-mastery. Here's how this plays out in real time. Picture this. You're in a team meeting where someone suggests fudging numbers to impress a client. Your stomach tightens. The room waits for your reaction. This is where the Stoic pause comes in, that deliberate breath between impulse and action. Instead of nodding along to avoid conflict or jumping in with objections, you create space. What would integrity look like here? Maybe it's asking clarifying questions to expose the ethical risk without accusation. Maybe it's privately proposing an alternative later. The key isn't rigid perfection but conscious alignment. Epictetus offered a litmus test. First, say to yourself what kind of person you want to be, then do what you have to do. That's Prohereis in action. It's not about agonizing over every minor choice, but about building a habit of pausing long enough to consult your inner compass. Think of it like a mental checkpoint. When scrolling social media, ask, is this nourishing my mind or numbing it? When tempted to gossip, consider, does this reflect the person I aspire to be? Small choices compound. Every time you prioritize virtue over validation, you're sculpting a sturdier self. Now bring this into your own life. There's a decision looming, whether to speak up about an unfair policy, how to handle a friend's betrayal, even what to order when you're trying to eat healthier. Before autopilot kicks in, hit pause. Ask 3 Stoic questions. What's the wisest long-term choice here? What would courage look like? Does this align with who I'm becoming? The answers might surprise you. That's the power of Prohereis. It turns everyday decisions into training grounds for character. Here's the challenge. Pick one upcoming choice, big or small, and run it through this filter. Not to judge past decisions, but to shape future ones with intention. Because the Stoics knew a secret. You don't just make choices, choices make you. And every moment of alignment, no matter how small, is a step toward the person you're meant to be. Seneca once wrote a letter that cut straight to the bone. It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. He wasn't being morbid, he was handing us a key. The Stoics practiced something called Memento Mori, remembering you must die, not to dwell on darkness, but to ignite clarity. Picture holding an hourglass where the sand represents your life. Most of us flip it over and forget to watch until the final grains start slipping. But what if you kept that hourglass in view? Not to panic, but to ask, am I spending this sand on what truly matters? Modern culture treats death like a taboo, something to avoid discussing until we're forced to. Compare that to ancient Rome, where feasts might include a slave whispering in guests' ears, "Remember, you are mortal." The Stoics didn't see this as macabre, they saw it as liberation. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." That's the power of Memento Mori. It strips away pettiness. Arguments over parking spots, resentment toward old slights, the endless chase for status. How much of that survives when you hold the brevity of life in your hands? Here's the paradox. Confronting mortality doesn't shrink your life, it expands it. A study of terminally ill patients found their biggest regret wasn't failure, but living by others' expectations. They spoke of working less, loving more, and letting themselves be happier. The Stoics arrived at that same wisdom 2 millennia earlier. When Seneca said, "Life is long if you know how to use it," he meant that time isn't measured in years but in attention. An hour spent fully present with a loved one contains more life than months of distracted autopilot. Try this exercise today. Write 2 lists. First, if I had 1 year to live, what would you stop doing immediately? Who would you reach out to? What unfinished business would you settle? Then, if I had 50 more years, how would you invest that time differently knowing it's finite? The contrast between those lists is your compass. One man who practiced this was Steve Jobs, who famously asked himself every morning, "If today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do?" When the answer was no too many days in a row, he changed course. This isn't about morbidity, it's about vitality. Death isn't life's opposite, it's life's compass. The Romans carved Memento Mori on rings and painted it in mosaics not to scare themselves, but to wake themselves up. Because when you remember the clock is ticking, you stop postponing joy, you speak truths you've been swallowing, and you waste less time on what doesn't belong in your soul's ledger. So tonight, as you turn off the lights, ask Seneca's question, what have you done with your day? Not to judge, but to align, because the sand is falling, and that's the gift. It means you're alive right now with a chance to choose better. Hierocles, the Stoic philosopher, gave us a powerful image, a series of concentric circles, with ourselves at the center, then family, friends, community, and finally all of humanity. His radical idea, to draw those outer circles inward, treating strangers with the same care we reserve for loved ones. Imagine if you reacted to a rude barrister with the same patience you'd extend to your sibling on a bad day. That's Stoic empathy in action, not because others deserve it, but because you deserve the peace that comes with choosing kindness over frustration. Difficult people, then, aren't interruptions to your peace, they're sparring partners for your character. Epictetus put it bluntly: when someone acts badly, ask yourself, how could they have acted otherwise? That question isn't excusing poor behavior, it's freeing you from the exhausting cycle of outrage. Think of a coworker who constantly interrupts you. Instead of simmering in resentment, you might realize their insecurity drives them, just as yours might in different circumstances. This isn't about being a doormat, it's about disarming their power to rattle you. Family conflicts test this like nothing else. A parent's critical remark or a sibling's old rivalry can trigger reactions buried deep in childhood patterns. Here's where Stoic reframing shines. That relative who always pushes your buttons, they're not just a nuisance, they're your personal resilience coach. Every eye-rolling comment is a chance to practice the pause, to respond with calm instead of reflex. Marcus Aurelius, who dealt with betrayals in his own family, wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In other words, don't let their bitterness become yours. Now try this today. Pick one relationship where tensions flare, maybe a neighbor who complains or a friend who cancels plans last minute. Before reacting, ask yourself 3 Stoic questions. What part of this is truly within my control? Could their behavior stem from pain I don't see? How might responding with patience change the dynamic? You might not transform the relationship overnight, but you'll reclaim something far more valuable: your own equilibrium. Because mastering social bonds isn't about fixing others. It's about fortifying yourself with understanding, one intentional response at a time. What if everything we've been taught about success is backwards? Society hands us a scorecard: wealth, status, likes, followers, and tells us to chase it relentlessly. But the Stoics flipped that script 2,000 years ago with a radical idea. The only true good is virtue, not money, not fame, not even health or comfort. Just 4 qualities: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Musonius Rufus put it bluntly: virtue is the only good and vice the only evil, everything else. Indifferent, not worthless, but secondary tools that gain value only when wielded by a virtuous hand. Let's break down these 4 pillars. Wisdom isn't just knowledge, it's the discernment to see reality clearly, without the filters of ego or fear. Courage isn't the absence of dread, it's moving forward despite it, whether you're standing up to a bully or admitting you were wrong. Justice extends beyond fairness. It's recognizing your interconnectedness with others, treating the barrister and the CEO with equal dignity. And temperance, that's the art of desire, not deprivation, but mastery over the endless more that modern life sells us. Now contrast this with today's obsession with external validation. Social media equates worth with visibility. Ads equate happiness with consumption. Even well-meaning parents ask, "What will you do for a living?" far sooner than, "What kind of person will you be?" The Stoics saw this coming. Seneca warned, "It's not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." Imagine applying that lens to your own life. That promotion you're stressing over, would it make you better or just busier? That influencer's curated lifestyle, does it inspire you or imprison you in comparison? Here's the litmus test. Picture losing everything tomorrow: your job, your savings, your reputation. What's left? If the answer is nothing, you've built your house on sand. But if you've cultivated virtue, you're unshakable. Epictetus, born a slave, knew this intimately. His famous teaching, "Some things are up to us, others are not," wasn't philosophy, it was survival. He couldn't control his chains, but he could control his character, and in that he was freer than his captors. So here's your challenge: define your non-negotiables. What virtues will you cling to when the winds of fortune shift? Maybe it's honesty, even when a lie would save face. Maybe it's compassion, even toward those who don't deserve it. Write them down not as abstract ideals, but as daily practices, because the Stoic secret isn't in grand gestures, but in the quiet moments when you choose principle over convenience. That's how virtue becomes your compass, not just your slogan. Seneca's piercing words on the shortness of life cut through centuries of distraction. It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Notice he doesn't say we lose time, we give it away, to mindless scrolling, to grudges we rehearse, to meetings that could have been emails. The modern cult of busyness disguises this theft beautifully. We wear exhaustion like a badge of honor, mistaking motion for progress, but the Stoics saw through this illusion. Marcus Aurelius drilled it into his own mind. Don't let the future disturb you. You will meet it with the same weapons of reason and purpose you wield today. In other words, the only moment you can truly master is the one you're in. Consider how we typically save time. We batch cook meals, outsource chores, optimize commutes, yet still feel starved for hours. Why? Because efficiency alone can't fix a fractured attention span. The real leak isn't in our schedules, it's in our focus. Picture this: you block off an hour for deep work, but within minutes, your phone pings with a sale notification. You glance just for a second, except now your brain's derailed, needing 23 minutes on average to fully refocus. That's the modern busyness trap. We're not lacking time, we're surrendering it in fragments to trivialities. Stoic time management begins with a ruthless audit. Seneca advised tracking your days like a financial ledger. Hold every hour in your grasp. Lay hold of today's task, and you won't depend so much on tomorrow's. Try this exercise tonight. List how you spent each waking hour today, not in broad strokes but in brutal detail. That 15-minute doom scroll while coffee brewed, write it down. The 40 minutes spent refreshing your inbox, account for it. You'll likely find what Seneca called poverty amidst plenty, hours frittered away on what doesn't align with your deepest values. Now apply Marcus Aurelius' call to action. Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one. Time blocking is the tactical counterpart to this philosophy. Instead of reacting to the day's chaos, you assign purpose to each segment. Start small. Reserve 30 morning minutes for your most demanding task. No notifications, no multitasking. Treat that block as sacred, like a meeting with your future self. The Stoics didn't have digital calendars, but they understood intentionality. Epictetus trained his students to ask, "Is this what I want to be doing with my one wild and precious life?" Before agreeing to any commitment, your challenge this week: eliminate one time waster that doesn't even bring you joy. Maybe it's that podcast you half listen to out of habit, or the nightly Netflix autoplay trap. Replace it with something Seneca would approve of: 10 minutes journaling, a walk without headphones, a real conversation. Because time isn't just currency, it's the raw material of a meaningful life. And every reclaimed moment is a brick in the foundation of your unshakable present. Epictetus offered perhaps the most liberating perspective on criticism when he said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you take it that matters." Think about that for a moment. Two people can receive identical feedback. One crumbles, the other grows. The difference isn't in the words spoken, but in the mental filter through which they're processed. Stoicism doesn't teach us to ignore criticism or pretend it doesn't sting. Instead, it gives us a framework to sift through the noise, extract what's useful, and let the rest fall away like leaves in the wind. Start by asking a simple but powerful question. Does this critique hold truth? Imagine your boss says your presentation lacked clarity. Your initial reaction might be defensiveness. They just don't get my vision. But the Stoic pause kicks in. Strip away the emotion and examine the claim objectively. Were your slides overcrowded? Did you rush through key points? Even if the delivery was harsh, the core feedback might be gold. Marcus Aurelius constantly checked himself with questions like, "What's being said about me? Is it true? Then why get upset? If it's false, why bother?" That's the essence of self-assessment, turning criticism into a mirror rather than a missile. Now consider the digital age where everyone has a megaphone. Online negativity often says more about the critic than the target. A troll's insult, that's noise, a reflection of their inner turmoil, not your worth. But what about constructive criticism buried in harsh packaging? A YouTube comment saying, "Your videos are too long and rambling," might be poorly phrased but could point to a real opportunity to tighten your editing. The Stoic approach isn't about dismissing all negativity or accepting all feedback as gospel. It's about developing the discernment to separate the wheat from the chaff. Here's where most of us get stuck. We conflate the message with the messenger. When feedback comes from someone we respect, we're all ears. When it comes from someone we dislike or who delivers it poorly, we shut down. But Stoicism teaches us to judge the content independently of the container. A rival coworker might point out a genuine blind spot in your project. Your toddler might unintentionally highlight your impatience. Wisdom can come wrapped in sandpaper. Your job is to unwrap it without bleeding. So here's your challenge. Think of one piece of criticism you've received recently, whether from a peer, a stranger online, or even your own inner critic. Instead of dwelling on how it was delivered, ask, if there's even 1% truth here, how can I use it to grow? Maybe that snarky comment about your cooking reveals you do overcook the pasta. Perhaps your friend's offhand remark about always running late hints at a pattern worth addressing. The goal isn't to please everyone, it's to mine every interaction for nuggets of self-improvement. Because when you stop fearing criticism and start filtering it, you transform observers into unwitting mentors and every critique into a stepping stone. Your heart pounds, your fists clench, and the words are already forming on your tongue, sharp, hot, ready to strike back. That moment before you speak in anger is where Stoic mastery lies. Seneca called it the sacred pause, that sliver of time between provocation and reaction where your freedom hides. He didn't just theorize about it, he practiced it literally. When tensions flared, he'd physically remove himself, walking around the block, stepping into another room, even counting breaths. The ancient version of "I need a minute." Why? Because emotion is fire, and fire spreads fastest when fed. But left alone, even the fiercest blaze burns itself out. Epictetus framed this power perfectly. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose. That space is where the Stoic pause works its magic. Picture a coworker snapping at you in a meeting. Your face flushes, your pulse races. That's biology. But in the next heartbeat, you have a choice: match their tone or anchor yourself in reason. One path escalates, the other dissolves tension. The pause isn't passive, it's the ultimate act of control. Here's how to make it tangible. Find a physical reminder, a bracelet you twist, a coin in your pocket, even a dot drawn on your wrist. Every time you notice it, let it whisper Seneca's question: does this reaction serve my highest self? One executive kept a smooth stone on his desk. During heated calls, he'd roll it in his palm, using that tactile cue to slow his breathing. Over time, the stone became his anchor, not to suppress emotion, but to respond with intention instead of reflex. Your challenge starts tomorrow. Before reacting to anything, a rude email, a child's tantrum, a slow driver, practice the Stoic pause. Step away if you can. Count to 10 if you can't. Ask yourself Epictetus' razor-sharp question. Will this matter in a year? Most conflicts evaporate under that lens, the ones that don't. Those are worth your energy, and now you'll meet them clear-eyed, not clouded by adrenaline, because in that pause, you're not losing the argument, you're winning back your peace. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private meditations, "What doesn't benefit the hive doesn't benefit the bee." That simple analogy captures the Stoic view of generosity, not as a noble extra, but as the natural order of human existence. The Stoics called this concept oikeiosis, the idea that our circle of care should expand like ripples in a pond, starting with ourselves and radiating outward to family, community, and ultimately all of humanity. But here's the twist. They saw philanthropy not just as giving money or time, but as a profound exercise in self-mastery. When you extend help without expecting recognition, you're not just serving others, you're fortifying your own character against the toxins of ego and validation. Seneca took this further in his letters, arguing that the highest form of giving isn't material at all. To give is to receive, he wrote. When you teach, you learn. When you share wisdom, you cement it within yourself. Picture a Stoic mentor guiding a student through a crisis. The mentor isn't just offering advice, they're reinforcing their own principles in real time. That's why the Stoics placed such value on sharing knowledge. Epictetus, born into slavery, dedicated his life to teaching precisely because he understood that wisdom grows when given away. Now contrast this with modern philanthropy's spotlight culture. Donor plaques, social media virtue signaling, billionaire naming rights on hospital wings. The Stoics wouldn't necessarily condemn these acts, but they'd question the motive. Is the goal to alleviate suffering or to burnish an image? Performative charity is like watering a plant with salt water. It may look generous, but it ultimately poisons the roots of true connection. Genuine service, on the other hand, thrives in the quiet corners. The anonymous benefactor who pays off lunch debts at a local school, the neighbor who shovels an elderly person's driveway before dawn. These acts embody oikeiosis, care without an audience, giving as its own reward. Here's where this becomes practical. Think of a recent act of kindness you witnessed or received. Maybe it was a stranger covering your coffee when your card declined, or a colleague staying late to help you meet a deadline. Recall how it felt, not just the relief, but the unexpected warmth of being seen without expectation. That's the alchemy Stoic philanthropy aims for. When you give from a place of wholeness rather than lack, you create a chain reaction. The recipient feels valued, you reinforce your own humanity, and the world gains one more thread of connection. Your challenge this week is to plan one anonymous act of service. Not a grand gesture, but something small and unseen, leaving a book you love on a park bench with a note, paying for the next person's toll, or even just picking up litter on your walk without posting about it. Notice how it shifts something in you, because true giving, as the Stoics knew, isn't about changing the world out there. It's about aligning the world within. Marcus Aurelius never faced the ping of a notification, but his wisdom cut straight to the heart of our digital dilemma. If you seek tranquility, do less. Not nothing, just less of what fractures your attention. The average person now touches their phone over 2,000 times a day, fragmenting focus into slivers. Seneca warned of this 2 millennia ago, just without the glowing screens. To be everywhere is to be nowhere. He was describing the distracted minds of ancient Rome, but swap scrolls for smartphones, and his words feel prophetic. The attention economy isn't just stealing our time, it's eroding our capacity for deep thought. the very skill Stoics considered sacred. Epictetus offered the antidote: control your inputs and you'll control your mind. Imagine applying that to your digital life. Every app, every feed, every autoplay video is an input vying for your neurons. The Stoic question isn't whether you can check social media, it's whether doing so aligns with your values. Try this experiment for one day. Treat your phone like Epictetus treated impressions. Before unlocking it, pause and ask, is this necessary? Is this nourishing? You'll quickly spot the difference between utility and compulsion. That reflex to reach for your phone during boredom, that's not you. It's a conditioned response, a hijacking of your dopamine pathways. Digital minimalism isn't about rejection, it's about intentionality. The Stoics didn't shun society, they engaged with it purposefully. Apply that lens to technology. Curate your apps like a Roman garden. Prune what doesn't bear fruit. Notice which platforms leave you drained versus energized. One executive replaced her morning scroll with a ritual, reading Seneca's letters on her balcony for 10 minutes. Within weeks, she reported sharper focus and fewer midday slumps. Why? She wasn't just removing distraction. She was reclaiming her capacity for sustained attention, the bedrock of Stoic practice. Your challenge starts tonight. Grab your phone and open screen time stats. Don't just glance, interrogate. Which apps trigger mindless taps? When do you habitually reach for distraction? Like a Stoic auditing desires, label each. Is this serving wisdom or sapping it? Then the radical act: delete one app for a week, not forever, just long enough to break the reflex. Notice the space that opens not just in your schedule, but in your mind, because every unchecked notification isn't just an interruption, it's a tiny surrender of your sovereignty. And reclaiming that sovereignty, that's where digital Stoicism begins. Marcus Aurelius ended each day with a simple but profound ritual. He'd retreat to his private quarters, take up his journal, and ask himself two questions. What did I do well today? And where could I improve? This wasn't just introspection, it was mental hygiene. The Stoics understood something modern science now confirms: how you end your day shapes how you begin the next. Your evening routine isn't just about winding down, it's about setting the stage for mastery. Think of your mind like a garden. If you leave it untended, weeds of worry and distraction take root overnight. But when you deliberately cultivate stillness, you wake to fertile soil for clarity and purpose. Seneca took this further with his evening practice of meditatio, a deliberate review of the day's events, not to dwell on regrets, but to distill wisdom. He wrote, "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and measure what I've done and said. Notice what's missing here: screens, distractions, the buzzing chaos of modern life." The Stoics didn't have smartphones, but they faced their own version of digital overload: endless social obligations, political intrigue, the noise of a bustling empire. Their solution: a deliberate buffer between the day's chaos and the night's rest. Science backs this up. Harvard research shows that just 15 minutes of journaling before bed can reduce nighttime rumination by nearly 40%. The act of transferring thoughts from mind to paper signals to your brain: this is handled. You can let go. Combine this with another Stoic practice, gratitude reflection, and you've got a potent sleep cocktail. Neuroscientists at Berkeley found that people who journaled about positive experiences for just 5 minutes before bed fell asleep faster and reported deeper rest. The Stoics were onto this millennia ago. Epictetus advised his students to end each day by recalling 3 things that went right, not to ignore life's difficulties, but to balance the scales of attention. Here's where modern habits betray us. We treat sleep like an on-off switch, cramming in emails until our heads hit the pillow, then wondering why our minds race. The Stoics knew better. They created a twilight zone, a bridge between activity and rest. For you, that might mean powering down devices 90 minutes before bed. Blue light disrupts melatonin production, or swapping scrolling for a few pages of philosophy. Seneca's letters are perfect, dense enough to engage, serene enough to soothe. One CEO I know keeps an old-fashioned alarm clock in her bedroom and charges her phone in another room entirely. Out of sight, out of mind, she says. The result, she's asleep within minutes, not battling the dopamine hangover of late-night Twitter. Your challenge tonight: craft a Stoic sleep checklist. Start with 3 items. First, disconnect no screens for at least 30 minutes before bed. Second, reflect, jot down 1 victory and 1 lesson from the day. Third, anchor. Read a short passage that elevates your thinking. Marcus Aurelius' Meditations is ideal. Keep it by your bedside. Over time, you'll notice something remarkable. Your evenings stop feeling like an exhausted collapse and start feeling like a deliberate transition. Because the Stoics knew a secret we've forgotten. How you end your day doesn't just affect your sleep, it shapes your tomorrow. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who trained Epictetus, put it bluntly: how can the mind stay healthy if the body is neglected? For the Stoics, physical fitness wasn't about sculpting the perfect Instagram body, it was about forging resilience. They saw sweat as the whetstone for willpower and discomfort as the tuition for growth. Imagine Rufus in ancient Rome, rising before dawn to train not with weights but with purpose, turning his morning run into a meditation on endurance. He didn't exercise to impress others, he trained to prove something to himself. That's the heart of Stoic fitness, movement as mental discipline, where every drop of sweat is a vote for your future self. Epictetus took this further with a challenge. Difficulties show what men are. He wasn't talking about theoretical hardships. He meant the burn in your lungs during hill sprints, the trembling in your arms during planks. Voluntary discomfort, like cold showers or fasting, was their version of modern HIIT training. The goal, not punishment but preparation. When life inevitably throws you into unexpected marathons, a health crisis, a financial setback, a sleepless night with a sick child, your body remembers, I've endured hard things before. That's why Stoics didn't avoid discomfort, they courted it. A Spartan athlete might run miles in sandals to toughen his feet. Today's Stoic might skip the elevator to strengthen resolve. Now contrast this with modern fitness culture's obsession with aesthetics. Vanity metrics, six-pack abs, thigh gaps, bicep circumference are fleeting trophies. Functional fitness, though, that's lifelong currency. The Stoics would ask, can you carry groceries up 3 flights when the elevator breaks? Lift a child without straining your back? Breathe through stress without collapsing into panic? These aren't just physical skills, they're survival strategies. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling an empire, prioritized functional strength. He wrote, "The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing, emphasizing readiness over showmanship." Here's where this becomes practical. Next time you're at the gym or on a run, shift your internal dialogue. Instead of "how do I look?" ask "what am I building?" That extra rep isn't just muscle growth, it's mental grit. The hill you dread, that's life's metaphor in real time. Align your workouts with resilience by adding one Stoic element: intentional discomfort. Finish your shower with 30 seconds of cold water. Take the stairs with your groceries. Do push-ups until failure, not to punish your body, but to remind your mind of its capacity. Because every time you choose temporary hardship voluntarily, you're inoculating yourself against involuntary suffering. The Stoics knew something modern science confirms. Physical endurance rewires neural pathways. Navy SEAL don't survive Hell Week because they're genetically superior. They survive because they've learned to reframe agony as progress. Your workout is your own micro-hell week, training you to meet life's chaos not with dread, but with the quiet confidence of someone who's already tasted struggle and thrived. So tomorrow, when your alarm goes off for that morning workout, hear Epictetus whispering, "This is where you find out who you are, not in the comfort of the snooze button, but in the crucible of effort." Seneca once wrote something that would make any modern financial advisor pause. "Wealth is slave to the wise, but master to the fool." That single sentence flips our entire relationship with money on its head. Most of us chase wealth as if it's the finish line, but Stoicism asks a far more revealing question. Are you accumulating money, or is money accumulating you? The difference isn't in your bank balance, it's in your mindset. Picture two people with identical salaries. One lives paycheck to paycheck, stressed by lifestyle inflation. The nicer apartment demanding pricier furniture, the luxury car requiring premium gas. The other lives well below their means, not out of scarcity, but from a quiet confidence that freedom isn't found in excess, but in space, the space between what you earn and what you truly need. Epictetus drove this point home with typical bluntness. It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. Apply that to finances. How many of us assume we need certain comforts simply because we've never questioned them? The daily takeout coffee, the subscription services piling up unused, the wardrobe stuffed with clothes we barely wear. These aren't evils, but they're silent taxes on our attention and autonomy. The Stoic approach isn't about deprivation. It's about auditing your life with the same clarity you'd use to review a misbehaving stock portfolio. What's yielding joy? What's just draining resources? Lifestyle inflation is the quiet thief of financial freedom. Every raise or windfall presents a choice. Funnel that extra money into higher fixed costs, or use it to widen the gap between your income and your essentials. One executive I know still drives the same reliable sedan he bought 7 years ago, despite promotions that could easily justify an upgrade. Why? Because he'd rather invest that car payment into experiences with his kids or a safety net that lets him sleep soundly. That's Stoic wealth in action, not the size of your liabilities, but the depth of your options. Here's your challenge. Open your banking app and scan last month's transactions. Find one line item, just one that represents comfort rather than necessity. Maybe it's the automatic renewal for that gym membership you never use, or the premium cable package you barely watch. Before you justify it, ask Epictetus' razor-sharp question. If this vanished tomorrow, would I genuinely be worse off? The answer might surprise you. Because true financial mastery isn't about how much you have, it's about how little you require to feel truly rich. Marcus Aurelius penned some of his most profound meditations not in the comfort of his palace, but in drafty campaign tents along the Danube frontier. There's something revealing about that, about how movement and displacement can sharpen our awareness. He wrote, "Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul, even as armies clashed beyond his tent flaps." That's the paradox of Stoic travel. It's not about escaping to find yourself, but about carrying your center wherever you go. The modern equivalent might be jotting reflections on a crowded subway or finding calm in an airport delay. The destination isn't the point, the practice of presence is. Packing light becomes a powerful metaphor here. The Stoics would have scoffed at our overstuffed suitcases, not just the physical weight, but the mental baggage we drag through security checks. Epictetus warned, it's not things that upset us, but our judgments about them. Apply that to travel, that frantic search for the perfect adapter, the frustration when Wi-Fi fails. Those aren't inherent crises, they're opportunities to practice detachment. Every unnecessary item in your backpack is a tiny anchor. just as every what-if worry is a chain around your attention. Try this next trip. Pack half what you think you need. Notice how your shoulders feel lighter, and your mind does too. Seneca punctured the illusion of geographical solutions with typical precision. You're mistaken if you think travel can set you free from sorrows. The things that trouble you will follow you wherever you go. How many of us have booked a getaway hoping it would solve our restlessness, only to bring our anxieties through customs with us? The tourist who complains about rain in Paris would have complained about heat in Barcelona. The real journey isn't across borders but inward, to the place where expectations meet reality. Here's an experiment. Take a minimalist trip, not to an exotic locale but somewhere mundane, a nearby town, a park you've never visited. Bring only essentials, a notebook, water, a single change of clothes. No itinerary, no bucket list photos, just you and your senses. When hunger strikes, eat where locals do. When tired, rest on a bench and watch the world unfold. You'll discover what the Stoics knew. Adventure isn't in mileage but in attention. That cracked sidewalk holds more stories than a guidebook if you're present enough to see them. Tomorrow, transform your commute into a meditation. Put away your earbuds. Notice the play of light through the window, the rhythm of strangers' footsteps, the way your breath syncs with the train's motion. The woman gripping her coffee like a lifeline, the teenager lost in thought. These are your fellow travelers in the human condition. As Marcus Aurelius observed, all things are woven together in sacred connection. You don't need a plane ticket to practice that awareness, just the willingness to see your ordinary path with new eyes. Because Stoic travel isn't about where you go, it's about how awake you are along the way. Before the first light of dawn touched the streets of ancient Rome, a Stoic's day had already begun. Marcus Aurelius rose while others slept, using the quiet hours to journal and steel his mind for the challenges ahead. Seneca described these early hours as sacred, a time when the soul could converse with itself uninterrupted by the world's demands. There's a reason the Stoics cherished this stillness. In the hush before the world wakes, there's space to align your intentions before outside forces start pulling you in every direction. Epictetus put it plainly. First say to yourself what kind of person you want to be, then do what you have to do. That's the essence of a Stoic morning, not just waking up, but waking up on purpose. Compare this to how most of us start our days today. The alarm blares, and within seconds, we're drowning in notifications, emails, news alerts, social media updates. We surrender our first thoughts to the agendas of others before we've even had a chance to remember our own. Reactive living begins the moment we open our eyes, like sailors tossed by waves without a compass. The Stoics would call this a tragic waste of potential. Those first quiet moments are your leverage point, the time when your mind is most malleable, most open to shaping the day rather than being shaped by it. A true Stoic morning ritual hinges on 3 pillars: reflection, planning, and mindfulness. Start with just 5 minutes of journaling, not about your to-do list, but about your principles. Ask yourself Marcus Aurelius' daily question: what virtue will I cultivate today? Maybe it's patience during a hectic meeting or courage to have an uncomfortable conversation. Next, visualize the day's challenges, not to anxiety spiral, but to rehearse your responses. Imagine your coworker taking credit for your idea, or your train being delayed. How will you maintain equanimity? This isn't pessimism, it's emotional inoculation. Finally, anchor yourself in the present. Step outside and feel the air on your skin. Notice the weight of your body in the chair. The Stoics called this prosach attention, so focused it becomes a form of reverence for the now. The contrast with modern mornings couldn't be starker. Where the Stoics cultivated silence, we fill every second with noise. Where they practiced anticipation, we stumble into the day unprepared. But here's the good news: you don't need to overhaul your life overnight. Begin with one small Stoic practice tomorrow. Maybe it's leaving your phone on airplane mode for the first 30 minutes after waking, or writing down one intention before checking email. Like a stone dropped in a pond, that single change will ripple outward. The goal isn't perfection, it's presence, because how you start your morning doesn't just set the tone for your day, it shapes the arc of your character over a lifetime. And that's worth waking up for. Every principle we've explored, control, perception, resilience, virtue, boils down to this: mastery isn't a destination, but a daily practice. The Stoics weren't sculpting marble statues of perfection. They were gardeners tending to their inner landscape, knowing some days would bring storms and others sunshine. Marcus Aurelius captured this beautifully in his final words to himself: "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig." That digging is the work of a lifetime, not to unearth some flawless version of yourself, but to clear away the debris of distraction, fear, and false desires until your natural clarity shines through. Think of it like learning a language. Fluency doesn't arrive in a single epiphany. It's built through countless conversations, missteps, and corrections. Each time you pause before reacting, reframe a setback, or choose integrity over convenience, you're adding another word to your vocabulary of wisdom. Even the Stoic sages stumbled. Seneca confessed to bouts of anger, Epictetus to moments of doubt. What set them apart wasn't immunity to struggle, but their commitment to returning again and again to the principles that anchored them. So here's your invitation: don't just admire these ideas, adopt one. Start small, but start today. Maybe it's the dichotomy of control, asking in frustrating moments, is this mine to change? Perhaps it's negative visualization, pausing each night to appreciate something you typically take for granted. Or maybe it's the discipline of desire, questioning whether that impulse purchase is truly serving you. Progress doesn't demand grand gestures. It thrives in the quiet consistency of showing up for yourself, one conscious choice at a time. As we close, let Marcus Aurelius guide you once more. Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one, not tomorrow, not when life calms down now, exactly where you are. The path isn't out there. It's woven into your next thought, your next decision, your next breath. So tell me this: which Stoic principle will you take with you into the week ahead? Let it be your compass, your reminder that every moment is an opportunity to practice the art of living well. And if this journey has sparked something in you, consider joining us as we continue exploring timeless wisdom, because the conversation, just like the work of self-mastery, never truly ends.